Hey guys, what's going on? Memes here. We're back at the science stuff and things, and today we're going to be talking about a video that Dr. Sabine Hossenfelder put out a couple of days ago. That a few people are talking about, and by a few people, about 1.8 million people or so have viewed this, at least according to the current statistics there. So. Yeah, so basically, just to outline what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through this entire video. It's about 8 minutes when you subtract out the advertisement at the end. Um, it's it's interesting. A lot of times, I'm like, okay, what are the calculations? What is the hard science? What are the things we can grasp? And then whatever the socio-political, all the other stuff around it. Okay, whatever. That's going to happen. That's going to fall in. People are going to have all these different views on this. I think this might be telling because, again, it's like, I don't personally know Dr. Hossenfelder. I just know her from the YouTube videos and stuff that she's put out there. So obviously, just by watching a few of her YouTube videos, I know everything about her. I don't know a dang thing about her. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this. We're going to analyze. And again, this is an email that Dr. Hossenfelder claims she had received about 7 years ago after one of her articles that was published in Nature. In that, was it Science needs a reason for people to trust it, or scientists need a reason for it to trust them. We're going to get into it in just a second. And it's very interesting because it may explain a lot about what might be going on. And especially just when you look at the outset of the video, just for the thumbnail there, it's like we created a bubble. One of the reasons I'm doing this video is because all different ideas popped in my head. It's like, is she talking about audience capture here? Is she talking about just standard groupthink within a particular community? What could it be? Because it could have been a lot of different things. It takes a very particular term. Welcome, Grizz. Oi, 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 my friend. Yes. All right. So let's not bloviate anymore. Let's get into this. All right, Dr. Ossenfelder, you've got an email. Take it away.
I want to read you an email that I was asked to keep confidential. I've been thinking about this for a long time, but I now believe that reading it to you will go some way to explain why I'm worried about the status of scientific research generally, but especially in the foundations of physics.
Okay. So, and again, we're gonna do what is that? Some people call it the EFAP. Every frame there's a wait. No, we're just gonna go through a little bit at a time because also fair use. Uh, but what I'm taking away from this is one of the big things that Dr. Hossenfelder has been harping upon for a while is she's concerned about what's going on within science, within physics, in particular, the foundations of physics there. This is something I have heard from a number of different folks. This is something that very often you will hear from folks like Professor Sean Carroll, as he had discussed with Kurt Mungle before, that very often a lot of the criticism that people have isn't just people saying, oh, physics isn't doing anything. What? I don't know. I'm thinking about potential storage chips that are holding magnitudes more data and every. Now that might be an engineering thing, and then you can say, "Oh, well, that was in chemistry and stuff." It's like I'm pretty sure some of the folks that are doing some of this amazing technological stuff, some of them probably also have degrees in physics. That's just my opinion right there. But welcome, Des. Hey, good to see you, Tommy. Good to see you. But Dr. Hossenfelder is sharing some of her concerns within science and everything, and that with also a lot of the socio-political stuff and things going on. I know Professor Carroll put out his thing about the funding for science and stuff because some of the things, especially if you're doing an executive order or something like that, because well, a lot of times like we would do laws and stuff like that, and then in my opinion, it seems over the past 20 years Congress, at least over here in the States, has ceded massive amounts of power to the executive branch, for better or worse. But when you cede massive amounts of power to an executive entity, don't be surprised when executive things come down. Um, but okay, this whole thing right here, science needs reason to be trusted. Okay, she posted this article, and apparently, a short time after this, she gets an email. Now, again, she's not divulging her sources and stuff like that. So apparently, this was, according to Dr. Hossenfelder, I have no idea if this is real. I tend to suspect that this might actually make a lot of sense. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this, is because one of her big thing is, are we truly making progress? Or are we just kind of saying a whole bunch of fancy 42-point Scrabble words and having other people be like, wow, those people are smart, multiverse and warp drives. Being like, cool, we're going to get there. It's basically communicating the truth. And personally, I think most folks are good people. That's my personal opinion. Now, just because you're a good person doesn't mean you occasionally might make an analogy saying, well, well, our realm, our existence itself is nothing but a whole bunch of vibrating one dimensional strings oscillating through 24 dimensions. Maybe that is the case. That's not my personal observation, but if the math leads us there and that makes sense and that's the simplest way to do it, by all means. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I couldn't say. Uh, but let us continue.
I received this email about 7 years ago after I published a comment in Nature Physics titled Science Needs Reason to be Trusted. In it, I explained how I lost trust in scientific self-correction after I realized how much of what's published in the foundations of physics is nonsense and continues to be nonsense. This email...
Oh, that was pretty scathing. So I'm sorry, I had to go back and double check to make sure I wasn't remirrored away back the other way there. Okay, where are we here? All right. So she's basically maybe not BS, because maybe that's a more of a profanity thing on YouTube, but saying things, a lot of it is nonsense. Now, I don't know about that. And again, it's one of those things where if you're being led by experiment and everything, to build those higher precision machines to get more and more magnitudes of precision, uh, that could be some issues. Now, if you're saying that a lot of stuff's coming out there, maybe really isn't as impactful as some folks are, because we all know that nobody, nobody would ever oversell something ever. Yeah, I don't mean that's something even Professor Sean Carroll's come up with. It sounds kind of like, and again, I'm feeding in my opinion here. My generalized takeaway is, if you follow the incentives of a system, what are the incentives of a system? Well, if your incentives are, we need to publish at least four, five, six papers each year. Okay. Do you actually have that much worth of material, or are you already? Well, we already have some things, so we're just going to submit to get funding for something we already have the results to, and we're going to go through this. Why? Because at least from what I remember from Professor Carroll, it's like you need to say the results you're going to have. It's like, well, how can you say what results you're going to find if you haven't even done the actual experiment or the actual things yet? So he's like, the system is set up in a particular way, that this is the way the system is. People seem to guess, kind of give it a wink and a nod, and they kind of cruise throughout the system. That sounds like, I don't know, most every other group and community I've ever run across ever. There's a system. It's an imperfect system. Kind of people kind of go through it and everything. So it's like I hear a lot of folks hating on different players. My thing is, well, if we're playing a game on a particular patch, it doesn't really seem balanced. It doesn't really seem to make sense. We can kind of struggle through the game. Are we actually enjoying it? Are we actually doing what we seek to do within the game, which is hopefully to advance, to better ourselves, and I don't know, maybe figure out what's going on to a better degree? That's a personal opinion here. Okay, I believe you. We're only 40 seconds into the 8 minutes.
It came from someone who I've met a few times but don't know in any depth, and who at the time worked at a top institution in the United States. To honor the request of confidentiality, I've removed some details. Hi, Sabine. I'm if you remember me. I'm not using my work email. The topic is a bit delicate, and I hope that our conversation will remain confidential. I'm contacting you regarding.
Well, apparently this conversation is no longer fully confidential, as about 1.8 million people have at least gotten a view on this video. Hey, Sherry, good to see you. We're just talking about, I don't know, is this particle gate? Because we're going to get into some interesting things here that I didn't really consider. And again, I can't verify this email and everything. I I'm gonna give, and I've heard, like, literally even on Twitter and stuff, just because it's like you go look out there, you see people from different perspectives. Some folks were saying, one of the physicists that I follow, he's like, well, I have 108, because this is a 7-year-old email apparently. This physicist is kind of joking. He's like, I have a 187-year-old email claiming about this stuff with it, and it goes through, and it's like, I'm your Nigerian astronomer cousin over, and it's basically the standard Nigerian prince letter, except with a flair for astronomy or something that maybe was a spam email. Um, pardon. Now, again, I'm going to give enough credence that some other folks were like, well, this is showing precisely what we've been saying this entire time with all of this, all of that. And then I listened to some of the stuff in it, and some folks are like, no, we've caught them red-handed. They're saying it's all BS. I also tend to think we should note there may be a wee bit of satire in here. And Professor Hossenfelder, he happens to be German, not that there's anything wrong with that, but we all know that Germany, or Germans in general, are well known for their knowledge, respect of satire and comedy. I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble for that. I apologize, maybe. I don't know. Uh, yes, yes. Sorry, let's continue.
Your recent paper in Nature, which made a lot of noise. First of all, congratulations on a nice paper. If you wanted to attract attention, you managed to do this. Actually, I'd like to ask you next time, think not only about short-term personal benefits, but about the community in general. Do you understand what consequences your publication might bring for our community? What are all these BSM model builders with exaggerated self-opinion going to do afterwards? What about experimentalists who survive hiding inside big multi-TV collaborations? Can you offer them all any decent employment alternatives?
Now, again, you can take that from a particular frame. You can say, well, oh, he's kind of framing it like it's all BS. Now, I don't know, maybe it is. Personally, I don't think it's all BS. Why? Because we're communicating at near the speed of light, remotely viewing this whole thing from a physics has heard a lot of stuff. Now, again, the criticism, it should be specifically targeted, because, well, that's what you're supposed to do. If you have a disease, if you have that cancer, God forbid, or something like that, you want to target the bad stuff. Because if all of a sudden you're just going to point your ire and all that energy to irradiate the whole thing, you're going to have the consequences of that. So again, I think some of this is often towards the fundamentals of physics, which apparently seems to be stirring. And according to some of the recent work out of Harvard from Professor Barondus, it sounds like quantum theory is back on the menu. I.e., there were little things that, by sheerly making a mistake, may have opened up new realms of exploration, and basically we might actually be able to figure out much better what the heck is going on. And I think that would be really cool, because maybe, just maybe, we could start to irk into the realm of maybe we could start to do these amazing like sci-fi type things. Like we've got 3D printers. What if we had a couple more dimensions? What if we had two more? We have 5 dimensions. At that point, you essentially have a replicator. Can we do that? I think it's within, now again, I can't say, but literally within a generation or two, we could be in like true post scarcity. So basically, i.e., if you don't have to worry about like your fellow human starving on the street and stuff like that, I think we could do better. And then we could explore the cosmos and heavens and do all that cool stuff and go other places around the galaxy and universe and F stuff up there. Why? Because that's what we do. Yes, yes. See, that's my line. My line for humor is usually Monty Python. It's like, if it was within a Monty Python sketch, I usually view that as the line. Will I cross that line? Yes, I will. I'm also quick to apologize for it. Why? You know I'm gonna screw up. Uh, but let's continue here because you can interpret this. And again, I have no idea who this person is. This person's name is redacted and everything. Uh, but let's just continue.
Some of them have families and young children. Some of them are already too old to get employment elsewhere. For some of them, academia is the only way to get US visa. If you like, yes, what we created is a bubble, but it helps thousands of those guys and their families not to die from hunger. We all do the same stuff and have.
Okay. See, I think I've listened to this maybe about once or twice. Now, it sounds like, and again, you can go at this with different levels of charitability. You can be like, all right, well, this is a person. Have we created a bubble? Or is it more just like we're doing the incremental stuff? Like, let's say, okay, we kind of have a result. Let's put in for some funding. We already basically know our results. We're going to do our thing there. And then we're going to do a little bit more incremental research. We're going to do a little incremental more research. Is it anything really new? Perhaps not. Perhaps it's a slightly different perspective. So in that case, yeah, it is kind of new. Now, the level of impact it's going to have for the rest of the field, and I think that's where the whole citation thing of impact factor and everything has. So let's say hypothetically, it's that's why it's like, all right, you got the general relativity stuff. It's like it probably has a lot of citations. I know, was it Professor Maldacena, that whole 5-dimensional ADS CFT? Oh, if you have a flat quantum theory on the boundary, you could tell everything that's going on in like the soupy center there. And like the math seems to work out. People aren't quite sure why it works and everything. But that's got like, I don't know, 20,000 citations because people found it useful. Now, does that actually help us understand what's going on? Maybe to some folks. I've come across some interesting papers where it's like, here's a 5-dimensional brain theory, like brain like a membrane, kind of like a bubble, rather than like the brain in here. And then, okay, we won't get into the thinking part. The consciousness thing is kind of like breaks me. So it's like, I'll leave that to the smarter folks. I'll just look at the science stuff, smashing particles and stuff together. Howdy, Dave. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. We're just going over Dr. Hossenfelder's uh, email reading that. And part of this, too, to be fair to the poster here, they had highlighted that Dr. Hossenfelder, by publishing something that is critical, because very often if you're critical of something, you tend to get a lot more attention rather than saying a whole bunch of nice things. Why? I don't know. I think universal truth number 6. Our minds tend to the worst places. Why? It sounds like an adaptive response. There's some rustling in the bushes. Maybe the tiger's gonna get ready to jump out and eat me. Maybe I should be cautious rather than being like, oh, that's obviously some happy bush noise. Somebody's gonna give me a pie or something. Probably not the case. So I think this is more of a human thing here, and that's the interesting part. The little intersect here, where he was highlighting, you published this article, and a lot of people paid attention to you. What are some of the consequences going to be? maybe a lot of folks in the community might not want to. Oh, we can't invite curmudgeonly Dr. Hossenfelder. Oh no, Sabine's going to come around. Oh, and she's going to say all these things, and we're going to feel uncomfortable and everything. And it's like, to be fair, she has been kind of portrayed like that, and that's probably not necessarily a fair thing. I know Dr. Eric Weinstein. He's a mathematician and like manager for Teal Capital. Uh, but he has proposed geometric unity. He has a fascination in physics and everything too. And I think that strikes me as an individual that felt like he's been personally hurt because maybe he wasn't included in some of the reindeer games, so to speak. Oh God, some of these old tales, they seem to be just reminiscing and resonating with him. I'm probably just a crazy person. All right, let's continue.
Have some trade secrets. For example, I'm one of the authors of the so-called model. Pretty useless stuff, old refurbished with a couple of new blows and whistles. But if people buy this and it helps them to get grants, who cares? For people who pay us.
Okay, welcome, K Show. Good to see you. Uh, yeah, David. See, that was kind of the thing too. It's when you come across. This is one of the things that I've noticed. This has even happened to me with Wolfram. A lot of times we get used to the different individuals that we're listening to talking to, and like we kind of like it's almost kind of like you can almost be like an LLM, a large language model, kind of like Chat GPT, and kind of like almost predict the next thing they're going to say if it's a particular topic you've heard them talk about before, and that's familiar and that's comfortable. Now, what happens when people get uncomfortable? They're not quite sure how to respond. So sometimes human beings, we might respond negatively or in a non-optimal way, so to speak. Um, but here's one of the things where it's like, okay, now, are there any other industries at all that perhaps have been criticized of, I don't know, maybe rehashing old things that eventually come out as it's basically the same old stuff. You made it a little bit shinier. You throw a couple of new bells on, maybe some whistles, maybe a vuvuzela, that little thingy that you spin around that makes the noise. It's a little different, but it's essentially the same thing. Um, I don't know. I'm sure that hasn't happened in modern entertainment, or people have been critical of that, or or what is it? It's oh God, new Coke, old Coke, this Coke, that Coke, Pepsi Cola, or something. Um, a lot of the stuff is the double down. What is the double down? Fascinating new thing. What is we? It's got no buns. What do you use for buns? Fried chicken. Why? Because we can. Throw some cheese and bacon. Boom. All the stuff they have, they just kind of repackaged it in a different way. Now, maybe that is game changing. Don't get me wrong. I love eating a good chicken cutlet, personally. But Dave, I didn't say it. I didn't say it. I'm pretty sure you could say that of other folks rather than our old some folks maybe it was the Bad Mouse Club. Um, I mean, I still have memories and stuff like that. I'm not just gonna say I'm not interested. I'm not gonna watch. That's all. Okay. Let us let us continue here. Let's get back up. All right.
All we do is just noise. They have zero idea that elementary particles exist. They pay us from public funds, not from their own, and basically pay for something cool, some new crazy hype, which they need either to include into their science spending reports or, in case of universities, to attract students. Your paper.
Oh, let's go back a second. Okay. So here's one of the big things here that I think is going to lot of people up, and I think this is the hold on. So the quote is, "For people who pay us, all we do is just noise." Okay. To be fair, I've listened to a decent number of lectures, often from like the ICTS or the Institute for Advanced Study or stuff like that. And you'll get a really brilliant person up, and they'll be like, "All right, we have our large Lagrange," and they're filling up like 8 blackboards full of stuff with all this heavy notation, and it's like, all right, I can see 1/4 this, that, I'm lost. Okay. uh but that's very often how it is from that perspective. A lot of folks, it's just noise, and then people tune in for like the 5 minutes at the end. It's like, what this means is that we have a high precision knowledge of electromagnetism, but gravity is still a mystery past the fifth significant digit or something. That's the generalized type of thing, not specifically that in and of itself. But to be fair, if you're talking about all these crazy things, a psi operator with a hat on here and everything, sometimes people get lost. So I don't think that's the most unfair thing, but I think one of the things we should do is, if it is noise, can we better explain? And that's when you start getting the analogies of string theory and it being a beautiful symphony of the universe. And again, that might be true, but are we painting an accurate enough picture? Are we saying that, listen, this is not a perfect analogy, but this is a useful first level approximation of, okay, maybe what's going on? You need to refine it, and you need to refine it, and you need to refine it. Um, I don't know. Maybe there's still people like me that I remember back in high school when they're teaching you in chemistry. It's like an electron. What is an electron? It's a point particle. It's infinitesimally small, but it exists in all these areas at the same time. You're like, that doesn't make any sense. And then you get into college, like, well, it's actually a charge density distribution. I'm like, wait a second. You mean kind of like a Rasengan in Naruto and some hypersphere whirly object. I've seen that in anime. That makes sense to me. I also have that visualization as a reference there. Now, do I know exactly what it is? No, that's going to be waving around. It's going to be twisting. It's doing this crazy thing. Okay, I can at least picture that. I didn't like being lied to. It's like we're saying it's a point particle, but it's also this. It's one of those things where it's like, let's say it's some energy density, and then when we're probing it, it's like boing, detector goes click. That's personal rant there, personal rant. Okay. So the rest of it is they have zero idea that elementary particles exist. I don't think that's. I think a lot of people know about that. Not all, but they pay us from the public funds, not from their own. Well, to be fair, public funds are technically derived from the people that are of whatever entity or nation or bureaucracy that is, and basically pay for something cool. I've got nothing wrong with paying for something cool, but I think I think the better way to phrase that, if you want to be more charitable, is something useful. You would like something useful and cool, but when it comes down to, if you're doing science for something cool or something useful, you tend to want to be something useful. The useful things usually lead to cool things too. Some crazy new hype, which they need either to include in their science spending report or, in the case of a university, to attract students. Okay, so I think that is some of probably, if you were gonna say there was some damning stuff there, so to speak. Um, Now, is hype necessarily a bad thing? No, hype can carry you. Is the hype substantiate? Again, the useful component there. Is this actually useful? Why? Because people want to. I don't know, if you're submitting for a new budget or something, you have to say, well, we're doing the most amazingly awesome, forward thinking, bestest ever stuff exists. Okay. It's kind of like the antithesis of, well, this person is a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad person. If you invert that and you start doing it the other way, some people will say, well, that toxic negativity, toxic positivity. Um, are you being accurate? Because ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Are you being accurate, or are you just telling people what they want to hear? People have done it. I've done that before. I've totally done that. but I tend to find the most accurate form of communication, if you actually want to like change somebody's mind and actually like care to inform them so they can make the best decision for themselves rather than you coercing them into making a decision, is you tell them what they need to hear rather than what they want to hear. Because you can sit there and say, oh, all these things, oh, science is a joke. It's all this. It's all a scam. We're wasting all these billions of dollars. You can say that, and there's a lot of people that want to hear that. And then you can also say, oh, any attack on science is an attack on the institutions of truth itself. All these attacks are horrific from conspiracy theorists that are no good, very bad. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you could say that too, and some people probably be okay with that. I think most folks are somewhere in between where it's like, well, I don't know about all that, but a lot of people I know and trust seem to have issues for that. Maybe I don't know what all the issues are, but if people, when challenged about these things, basically just call you a dumb idiot and they're not actually giving you an answer, sounds really condescending. Sounds really condescending. And I've been condescending before, and I'm like, wow, I was a dick. Sometimes, yeah, you got to live, you got to learn and everything. Well, are you saying more of it's the opposite of advanced studies? Here's the thing. The question is usefulness again. Is it true? Because if it's true, then we should be able to predict more things. And if we can predict more things, we should have higher precision. If we have higher precision or different things, we should be able to make cooler stuff and utilize different physical things that can happen in our world that we were not originally aware of to do crazy stuff. Now, my best example of that is just, I don't know, video games and stuff. You go from like a Super Mario game where it's like, all right, depending on how hard you hold down this button, Mario's going to jump harder and longer and higher and do all these things. To it's like, all right, look at some modern video game, or even if you don't want to look at modern, look at video games from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or something. I remember playing Ark Survival Evolved. It's like when they first show some of those cutscenes of the dude running through the forest and stuff, and you're hearing like thump, thump. It's like, oh my God, it sounds like Jurassic Park. And all of a sudden he turns around, you see this one thing, and the T-Rex busts out through the thing. You're like, oh my God, like this is in-game footage. I'm like, there's no way that could be. And I start playing the game. I had to lower the resolution a bit on my laptop, but it started playing, and I'm like, oh my God, this actually is like the in-game stuff. How did we get there? How does this seem to have a lot of real world, apparently in-game physics? Oh, you jump. Oh, you go off the. Oh, you jump too far down. Oh, guess what? Your legs are going to break. You're going to take a lot of damage, and your character's probably going to perish. Why? Science. Science and technology. But yeah, well, exactly, Tommy. That's the thing. It's like, you lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. You can try to make it drink, but you might end up drowning the horse, and that's probably not going to be what you were going for at all. And plus, at that point, you murdered a horse. So that's not no good. Um, I'm sorry. All right, let's continue. All right, and then try to attract. So basically, marketing hype. Why? Nobody would ever do that. We continue.
Some new crazy hype, which they need either to include into their science spending reports or, in case of universities, to attract students. Your paper made a lot of noise and most likely will affect redistribution of HEP funds towards other areas, but I doubt that you'll be able to suggest and implement any organizational changes. Also, any changes of quality criteria which would demonstrate uselessness of somebody's work will have zero chance of approval.
Muted. Dark. Professional YouTuber. All right. Well, it's being pointed out that Dr. Hossenfelder's Nature paper about 7 years ago made a lot of noise and will likely affect redistribution of HEP, which is high energy physics funds. Yes, it's Yes, acronyms. Anybody that's ever been part of a large company will realize, yes, acronyms. And they give you like a 32-page thing that like nobody reads of all the yes, high energy physics funds towards other areas. But the person is claiming that they doubt that you will be able to suggest and implement any organizational change. Okay. So the claim is Dr. Hossenfelder came out here. He started criticizing the high energy particle physics. Okay. Now, ultimately, and this might actually not be a bad critique because this kind of sounds like some of the things that I've seen in real life. You start criticizing something, people are like, okay, well, there's a problem here. Well, what's the easiest solution? At least, well, we're giving money to something that's a problem. Let's divert some money elsewhere. Now, is that fixing said problem? Or is it more along the lines of, okay, we've got a problem. How are we going to fix it? Now, ultimately, if you have somebody concerned that's within the field, you would want the person, if she is truly concerned, to help make the changes that would be necessary. As far as I understand, Dr. Hospital is not part of any leadership within any of these governing or entity agencies at all. So ultimately, the criticism seems that I understand you want to make things better. Here's the problem. You gave criticism. If it was you making the changes to make this better, maybe that would be the case. If it's a bureaucratic thing and you've got multiple layers of bureaucracy and all these different folks with all different perspectives, some of whom may have been involved in certain community processes, or maybe it's just kind of an outsider and just kind of managing it based upon standard management 101 techniques, whatever philosophy they may follow. Um, the problem with that is the easiest way to just cut money. Uh, okay, any change of quality criteria which would demonstrate useless. Uh, so basically, they're also saying that if you're going to change some criteria into something that's going to make established people's work look not useful, you're never going to get a pass because the people that are often probably in management roles or leadership roles, if they have to do something and that something says that their work is now discredited and their careers are based upon being credited for that being useful work, people usually don't don't people usually often go in their the people usually act in their own self-interest. That's what I take away. Okay, let's continue.
which would demonstrate uselessness of somebody's work will have zero chance of approval. I understand that all what I wrote above might sound a bit harsh, sorry for this, but this is how our society is built, and this is not only a problem in the HEP community, but also exists in all other areas.
Oh, that sounds familiar. That well, that's one of the interesting things about this, just because when I had listened to this, and I'm listening to the complaints, it's like you could say, "Oh, this is." I mean, you can't say it's a whistleblower. It's just somebody sending a personal email to somebody else within the community. Um, well, we'll get into more of the details and what some of the other repercussions might be, because I find it interesting that apparently that article within Nature caused ripples within the community 7 years ago, and now this is coming back out 7 years later, and I don't know, seems to have created quite a few ripples there. Uh, so I'm just yeah. All right, let's finish up. We got a few more minutes.
My heart is bleeding when I regularly see bright and intelligent persons with independent ways of thinking leaving academia or getting kicked out, whereas obedient idiots remain. But there's nothing we can do. Those who get kicked out usually find better opportunities outside of academia. Those who remain in academia accept the rules and enjoy the comfort of academic life. Of course,
Oh, oh, oh no. Oh, this. Keep your head down, collect your bonus, and get yelled at by your boss as little as possible. That was what I took away from doing a lot of time in corporate America. It's again, it's not all, and again, everything is different there, but at least from some of my experience, not all, but if you're in a large bureaucracy, this just seems to be something of the nature of bureaucracy. Once you get some layers and layers, and you could have some really great like businesses that started, they were doing amazing work, but as you add the layers and layers and layers of the onionish based bureaucracy, um, communication and precision and doing basically useful things, your output it's usually not as good. It's corporatism can ruin a lot of things, uh, if not well managed. But this is one of the things that I think you've heard from a lot of people, not all, but you hear stories like this. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that was a one off experience. And then you hear more stories like this. And then you have an email like this. And again, this is an alleged email and everything. Everything here is just based upon Dr. Hossenfelder's word and everything. Um, but seem, it seems to have resonated with a lot of folks. And especially having heard a lot of stories and then occasionally, and again, not all. I think most folks are good people, and it depends on how you interact with folks. But I'm like, suppose you go to a scientific conference and you go up there, and there's a respected scientist, and you're asking, like, if you ask like a legitimate question that your average Sally, Dick, or Jane has, and they said, "Oh, well, that's a silly question for these reasons," and it's like, yeah, I mean, is it? You just kind of invoke some arbitrary thing without kind of explaining it, and it comes down to, oh, sit down, little person. Can't possibly understand these things. And it's like, maybe it's complicated. Maybe I can't understand these things. That's fine. Can you at least go through and try to explain? It's often the condescending nature. And what I find is a lot of the best science communicators, they'll let you know. Like I just finished up something for Professor Keating's channel, and something about anomalies in physics. And one of the audience members had asked, it's like something about the black hole information paradox. And the physicist he had on, he's like, well, you obviously saved the easiest ones for the very end. And he's like, listen, I'm a particle physicist. I am not qualified at all to talk about the black hole information paradox or anything like that. And to be fair, if you're a professional in one respect, that is the answer you're supposed to give. Now, you can say, listen, I'm not qualified. But just for fun, my personal way of thinking of things, and again, that's fine. Now you're conjecturing, you're giving an opinion rather than saying, well, this is obviously the way things are. Because I think that's where a lot of us on the internet that get excited about science, and maybe we see a cool thing here, and then we kind of point it out, and maybe somebody notices, and you're like, well, this cool thing, therefore everything else. It's kind of like, well, there's an unidentified aerial phenomena, therefore aliens. Perhaps that is the case, but it's like, thing in the sky, I don't understand. Two extraterrestrial beings from wherever in the Milky Way or universe are visiting us. That may be the case, but blinky thing that I don't understand in the sky does not equal. It may equal, but right now it's just a blinky thing in the sky that I don't understand, and that's where we run into the issues because you can claim, be like, this is one of the things that I learned from watching like a lot of Wolfram, because they would be having like discussions about different things right there. So it's like, well, we're fine. Now, is this true? Well, that's not really true. It's like, all right, so the claim would be blah 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 blah. Professor Wolfram would go on, and then you'll have like Jonathan chime in, and then you'll have like Xerxes, and they'll be adding there and kind of reframing and everything to try to get into a way that like makes sense. Be like, does this claim hold up? Maybe to the current data, maybe it will be falsified. Maybe like, oh no, we were wrong. We got this there, and then you move on, and you want to do better. I think some folks, and again, this is a personal opinion, occasionally they get really into something like this is the thing. It's kind of like in Tommy Boy. It's like, I have my sale, my precious sale, and then I just start losing my mind, and then you just ruin it because if people are just saying yes and nodding, oh yes, yes, oh yes, that's the best thing. Yes, you have the idea. Not much conflict there, is there? But that sounds a little similar to the yes, boss. Yes, boss. Just it's gonna be the bobblehead employee there. Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Keep your head down, collect your bonus, and get yelled at as little as possible. Now, maybe that's what some people want. Now, is that how we make progress, or is it more like, well, this doesn't seem to make sense right here? Some folks feel if you point it out occasionally folks don't take kindly to being wrong. Some folks I feel it kind of hurts them. I'm just saying, how hard is it to say you were wrong? But um, the I see. I think Professor Tyson kind of gets a bad rap there because he'll say things, and it's like he might have a personal opinion that I happen to disagree with, and everything. Um, a lot of it is usually, I think, clips taken out of context. Because if you actually watch his actual series, Star Talk, he seems to be pretty accurate. I mean, maybe occasionally something he's like, "Oh, we would have gravitons for this, and the graviton is a hypothetical particle we haven't observed." But a lot of folks have confidence that gravitons exist, and it's something that's like, I mean, that kind of seems like a little minuscule thing if it's generally accepted there. Um, if you take some of the things out of context and you take two sentences and it was out of, I don't know, a 2 or 3 minute conversation, maybe a 5 minute spiel where he talks about something and he brings it back around showing that that's not actually the case, and you didn't have the full context there. I think that's where, what is it, oh, who is it, the Thor looking guy, he used to do some of that science stuff. Oh god, forget what his name is. I'm on his Discord server. Uh, but even he was talking about when you have a lot of clickbaity science videos and stuff. He's like, basically, here's what you do: you take a picture of Professor Michio Kaku or Professor deGrasse Tyson. It's like Kaku, Tyson, Tyson, Kaku. Just put a picture of them and just use one random little quote and be like, scientists astonished that mysterious. You just use all those fancy words that get the human being. Oh, is this the new thing? Oh, is this some? I haven't seen this before, but it's got Professor Neil deGrasse Tyson or Professor Michio Kaku, so it's got to be legit. It's the appeal to authority and everything there. Um, I just think it's like it's someone that's a string of up by saying this way. No, 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 no. Oh, Des. Uh, well, that's one of the things, Tommy. It's I don't know. The person is open to learning and rethinking a stance. Well, yeah, no, you're supposed to use logic, and this is one of the things where it's like I might have disagree with Sam Harris on a lot of things and everything, but one of the smartest things he ever said, it's like, listen, if you have a way of thinking and you get new information that you did not have before, if you had that information before, would you be thinking different than you are now? Why wouldn't you change? Because it's inconvenient? Because maybe some people you're not fans of? Maybe this gives a little bit of credence to what they were saying? Yeah, no, that's the thing. You should be open to new information there. And then some people they get the new information like, oh wow, I was wrong. And then you'll see some people like, but weren't you just saying this? Yeah, but I didn't know this before. This seems like a very important piece of information that would affect one's decision, And some people seem surprised while people changing their minds. Oh, you changed. It's like, oh, I'm better. Well, yeah, I'm better informed. 'Cause, yeah, yeah, most things are wrong. We want to be less wrong. I'm sorry for the rant. let's continue for our little scientific exploration.
Academia, accept the rules and enjoy the comfort of academic life. Of course, sometimes there are exceptions, like string theorists Smolin and White, but I doubt you'd like to share their destiny.
Welcome, Jax. We're just watching as Dr. Hossenfelder is expressing her concern and at some point towards the end, straight up disdain for some of the folks within her community she may feel are perhaps unsufferable, let's say. And less than 2 million folks have watched it now in a few days. So, uh, yeah, it's notifications can be weird. But oh, where are we? I'm sorry. Let's continue with the good doctor.
I'm reading this to you as an illustration, a rare example of somebody else's honest words. I can't prove to you that this email is real, so you'll have to take my word for it. In contrast to the person who sent this email, I don't think that taxpayers are stupid. We're not paying physicists for crazy new hype. We want to see results. And soon taxpayers will start asking some tough questions. An example. So they told you that this Dune experiment that's being built from some billions of dollars of public funds at Fermilab will tell us why we exist or why the universe didn't disappear. I regret.
Uh-oh. She was going after a particular experiment, the Dune Observatory at Fermilab. So what they're talking about here is, as far as I understand, is they got Fermilab. You get your Fermilab building over there, and they've got a little proton accelerator there, and it goes through, and then they have the muons and stuff come on. You have a particle detector to detect the muons, and then it needs to go 800 miles underground. So you need to make sure that essentially there's nothing within the way that you're going to run into there, because you're kind of firing particles through the earth. Uh, to an underground particle detector to another, the Sanford Underground Research Facility, to basically detect the neutrinos as they, I believe, oscillate through there. So basically, if you detect the muons there, you should be able to detect out the actual neutrinos and stuff there. Okay.
And that's being built from some billions of dollars of public funds at Fermilab will tell us why we exist or why the universe didn't disappear. I regret to inform you that it won't do any such thing. Regardless of what the result of the Dune experiment will be, it'll not tell us why the universe contains more matter than antimatter, because this question is impossible to answer within the context of our current theories.
Now, I'm pretty sure that's right. And let me just see, how did they phrase this? Okay. Now, notice this. One of the big things is you'll have scientists to come up with a thing. They'll say some words. And then you'll have different journalists be like, so is it kind of like this, blah, blah, blah. And yes, that's why it's phrased like this. As we can see from the BBC Sky at Night magazine, neutrinos could explain why the universe didn't just disappear after the Big Bang. Now, semantics are important, my friends. Now, a lot of times, if you see this, occasionally we may substitute words or sayings. Now, could means that it could be, perhaps, we don't know. It's kind of like blinky light in the sky, therefore aliens, versus blinky light in the sky is blinky light in the sky. I don't know why. Okay. Now, neutrinos could explain why the universe didn't just disappear after the Big Bang. Perhaps it could. Will it? Seems pretty unlikely. Maybe we would discover some brand new thing. Oh, it's obviously this. It's been this way all along. Oh, duh. Now, if, and again, this is, I think, on kind of on journalism and clickbait media itself. If it's that neutrinos will explain, yeah, then that seems like a BS statement. So whenever you see any different science papers and stuff like this could, might Just notice anytime you see a could, might, perhaps, any of those caveats, answer might be it probably won't. Perhaps it might. Perhaps it might in some way, shape, or form. At some point, it may. But yeah, yeah. Oh, that's see. There's another reason I'm doing this too. Let's actually get into that right now. Now, Dr. Hossenfelder said she got this email, um, like 7 years ago. So let's do this because the interesting thing, I'm like, could this perhaps be the email that influenced her to start becoming a social media influencer, a science expositor, so to speak? So let's take a look. We got Dr. Hossenfelder's channel here. So she joined. Okay, so 2007. So oh God, 18 years ago. Oh God, her channel is an adult now. Wow, time flies. Okay. So that's 18 years ago. So 13 years ago, a little 4-minute video. What are natural units? This is her thing doing the Monty Python thingy about the universe, different things. 10 years ago, some random things, some commentary, some fun videos, some more music videos. So once we get about 6 years ago, she had started posting some science videos, probably about 5 or 6, 7 science videos here. 5 years ago, started posting more regularly. And now, as we get in the past few years, that's when she had swapped to doing like she got more recent doing weekly news. I know Professor Keating encouraged her to do stuff more recently, and now she basically has videos just about every day. Um, so at least according to based upon what she said, let's just say hypothetically, you're a scientist, you have something going on, maybe you got some concerns for your community. You're writing the opinion piece there. It happens again to nature. Okay, why? Because you're a respected scientist and everything. Okay, gets there, starts making a buzz. Some people have some concerns. Maybe some folks are like, "Oh, we gotta stay away from Sabine. Why? Oh, she's got the science cooties over there. Why? Oh God, people will think, well," and then somebody out there is just kind of explaining how it is, that. Um, there might be some satire in there. What will these people ever do? Um, yeah. What would people do if they lost their jobs? Now, again, I'm not a big fan of cancel culture or stuff like that. My thing is, if you're doing a job, and your job is important, and you should be able to explain why your job is important and everything. Now, and again, I don't know if this email was literally the reason why she started putting out all these things, but I'm like, well, if I was a scientist and being a troublemaker that I am, I've occasionally brought up some issues that certain folks didn't want to hear. Usually doesn't go over well. People don't take kindly to that. People get very cautious. People get very anxious and everything. Uh, so as a fellow troublemaker, I maybe get a little bit of a vibe there. But yeah, yeah. Uh, Math. I think. Well, I think Dr. Hossenfelder's strength was actually math. I think she. Oh, hold on. I clicked the wrong thing. Hold on. There we go. All right. Let's get back to the video. I'm gonna wrap this up. All right. Let's keep boom.
Or why the universe didn't disappear. I regret to inform you that it won't do any such thing. Regardless of what the result of the Dune experiment will be, it'll not tell us why the universe contains more matter than antimatter, because this question is impossible to answer within the context of our current theories. The matter-antimatter symmetry that Dune is supposedly shedding light on is a pseudo-problem. It's a story that physicists have made up that they're now selling to the public because they think that once they have the money, it doesn't really matter if they deliver what they promised.
Now, I think that's a part that probably a lot of folks probably have some issues with there. Now, I have no idea whether that's true or not, but it sounds like she's kind of expressing it as, well, some folks know that this is BS, but they're doing it anyway, which is ultimately the main concern because I don't know. I ain't an attorney or anything, but it's like fraud kind of seems like a problem and stuff, especially if there's an exchange of money or something. And we'll get into that in a moment. And again, I have no idea, but that's the thing. I don't think that's fair. In my opinion, it's just I think there are a lot of folks out there that think that they're doing the right thing, and these are important things. Now you can maybe just say that hypothetically, let's just, we're completely astray. We're going in the complete wrong direction. Well, people don't know they're going in the wrong direction. Then well, you're obviously doing the job. That and it's not like a lot of folks out there in many different areas and communities end up just getting beaten down by life and just kind of just yes boss, yes boss, yes boss, knowing that okay, maybe this isn't perfect, but at some point it'll be better, we'll be more perfect, we'll be able to do more useful things, help move society forward and do greater things. And then maybe some folks are just like, I don't care, I just want to collect my paycheck, go home to my family and just have that done. It's like, can you really fault a person for that? Now the question is, are we actually going in the wrong direction and everything? And this is where Dr. Hossenfelder starts getting more fired up. Let's run.
Though, to be fair, I think that some of them are honestly confused about what CP violation in the neutrino sector even says about antimatter. What will the experiment do? It'll measure some properties of neutrinos. What's that good for? It's good for keeping particle physicists employed, because some of them have families and it'd be unfair if they had to do something useful for their income, wouldn't it? And has anyone
To be fair, it's well, that depends. It's you considering measuring higher precision properties of neutrinos worthwhile? I don't know. I think that's one of the things where it's like if you're a lot of times in our heads we compartmentalize, or at least I do. It's like, all right, here's a statement. Where is it coming from? Does it match with that person? All right, Sabine often criticizing folks. Okay, I would expect that. Now, if it's from somebody else and they're criticizing partially somebody within their community, and maybe they're more of a Dr. Tyson or stuff like that. Now, perhaps they would criticize the actual idea. That's the big thing. It's just very often ideas and people kind of get associated with it, and you can attack an idea, but very often being human beings like, or at least like me, I just can't help myself, and occasionally people will slip in little ad hominem attack. We're gonna have a little jab at that person, and maybe that jab isn't really fair because well, they can't control their immutable characteristics or something like that. So if you're taking a jab at somebody for some reason rather than just their idea, that's how a lot of fights and everything. So let's let's continue. All right, say the arc new collider.
anyone even notice that the US government spent another $2 billion or so on a new particle collider at Brookhaven? Its purpose is to improve measurements of the quark and gluon distribution inside of heavy ions. What's it good for? You're not supposed to ask.
Okay, here's the thing. This is where so much of the problem comes up because all right, just say what is the experiment doing? We're measuring properties of neutrinos. What is this experiment doing for the Brookhaven collider? We're measuring quark gluon interaction. Okay, that's what it's doing. Now, when all of a sudden you say new Brookhaven collider may unlock the truth to our origins in the universe. To be fair, I'm pretty sure somebody has probably done something like that because perhaps it might. 'Cause the strong force apparently is from them to the high temperatures and everything, and that apparently things were a lot hotter and denser a long time ago. Maybe that's not an inaccurate statement at all. The problem is, do we know that? But if you say it might, oh, maybe it will, because statistically, everything has a chance of happening given long enough time. Uh, that's just statistically speaking. But all right, let us continue. Almost there.
Supposed to believe that you're too stupid to understand what it's good for. But let me fill you in. It's good for keeping particle physicists employed. Meanwhile, the Chinese are laughing their asses off that you think it makes your country worth defending. The particle physicists have created these bubbles.
Oh. Again, it depends on if you think it's useful or not. Um, One of the things that I've noticed, and again, I've never been to China or anything like that, but all I know is apparently they've had sustained fusion at like 100 million degrees for like 18 minutes or something, which is like a magnitude or so beyond other things. They're actually like starting to build some thorium-based reactor and everything. And I was listening to a Roger Penrose video while I was in Target the other day, and I went to go like move the app down, and all of a sudden the Roger Penrose video stopped playing. And I'm like, what is this? And then I realized it was from like Tencent or some basically Chinese based company. It was their YouTube channel. The Roger Penrose video was a kid's video. Our kids were, we have jumping around on TikTok doing all the different TikTok things. We've had different folks ingesting Tide Pods over the years because that's exciting. And over in China, their kids are watching Professor Roger Penrose. Just pointing out something that I noticed. Uh, it's I don't know. Maybe that is the case, but I don't know. I'm an American, so it's it's me kind of going a little bit, but
Of useless research is not a problem that can be fixed from inside the community. The only way to fix the problem is to stop paying them. I'm afraid that this is exactly what's going to happen. I didn't want this to happen. This is why I wrote my 2017 comment. But at this point, it's too late for them to change anything about it. I've read this email dozens of times, and each time I'm stunned by how condescending it is to all the people who do honest work and whose taxes pay for academic jobs. It makes me sick. And it makes
yeah, and see, that's, I mean, ultimately, it's one of the reasons she's probably doing this as well. It's because there seems to be a pause on a lot of grant funding and stuff like that within, I think, the National Science Foundation and stuff. Now, is it all grants? Is it some grants? I've heard that cancer research has been stopped or clinical trials. So, is it affecting people? Yeah, anytime you do something on a massive scale, it's going to have effects. Now, this kind of sounds like something that she had been talking about, and it sounds like a lot of folks might be losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods, and everything. And again, I'm not a big fan of that. Um, Perhaps using a little bit of precision, being like, okay, do we need to have the $500,000 to have the shrimp on the little thing? And again, maybe that made sense or something like that. But here's the thing: when you're going to spend government money on projects that sound silly, people have the right kind of joke about that. That's going to happen. It's kind of like every time. It's like, well, we have a lot of well, there's a lot of methane going in the air from the agricultural facility. Okay, anytime you start to apply a methane tax to bovine, people get them have the right to make fun of you for imposing the cow fart tax because that's what it is. I'm just pointing out. I don't make the rules. I'm just saying that that seems to be part of what's going on here, and uh, I don't like seeing people lose their jobs, but it's one of those things where it's like, all right, if we're gonna go through and be like, all right, people need to justify their existence. You're gonna be, I don't know, it's tough because it's like if I'm not in something, and like I've seen BS, and a lot of times you have some extremely hardworking people that produce so much, and then there are other folks that kind of just Keep your head down. Hey, I walked around with a file of papers. It made me look busy and stuff like that. Different people contribute different amounts. That's what I'm kind of saying here. All right, let's wrap.
Makes me glad that I no longer have anything to do with this so-called research area that's rotten to the core. If you're one of the many physicists who know full well what nonsense research I'm talking about, but you still keep your mouth shut, if you're one of those who laugh about me because no one believes what I'm saying, if you're one of those who spread lies about me, like that story that I was invited to give a talk at CERN but was afraid to go, did you make that up? I hope it was amusing. But gee,
Oh, oh, see, that's the thing, because we get rumors and stuff like that. See, I hadn't really heard about that. And that sounds like a plausible thing, because I mean, if someone's going out there saying, oh, she was invited to CERN to give a talk and she was too cowardly to come and face us and stuff like that. If some folks say that and that begins alleged and it's untrue, probably made Dr. Hossenfelder a little bit more likely to make this video that seems to be quickly pushing 2 million views.
Jesus, use your brain. Your problem isn't that I'm making noise. Your problem is that you're lying to the people who pay you. Your problem is that you're cowards without a shred of scientific integrity. Your problem is that every bubble eventually bursts. By the way, the reason I now call it nonsense research and no longer bullshit research is that YouTube flags the latter as profanity. And we don't want to be profane on this channel. That would be absolutely terrible. All right, let me know what you think about all this in the comments.
All right. Oh, I mean, it's only a 9-minute video. The rest of it is basically like a minute and a half commercial for whatever brand that was on there. But yeah. That's I've been seeing folks notice this, and that was one of the things. And again, as somebody that's more of an outsider, I'm listening to a lot of this criticism. I'm like, I've basically observed this like most everywhere else. And to be fair to the person in that alleged email there, because again, I don't know the proof and everything. I'm going to give Dr. Hossenfelder the benefit of it on and assume she did get an email. She is redacting it, and she does care. Because I do think that she does care. But again, other people go about these things differently. And even in that email, that person was like, listen, this is just life. Now, the person might be pointing that out, and that might be true. But again, rather than because Dr. Hossenfelder, to be fair to her, it sounded like it said science, not scientists. Basically, the system of science needs a better framework as far as the bureaucratic function. That's the big thing I take away. It's don't hate the player, hate the game. And even in the rest of that email there, and again, assuming this is all true, and there are other people that feel this way because you have heard, and a lot of folks don't really go public with it because they don't want to get criticized. You don't want the eye of Sauron coming at you. I mean, that's kind of scary right there. Um, See that's the hard thing to figure out. That's there because, and this is where often I think a lot of conflict comes from, or at least based upon the communities I've interacted with there. Somebody says something or does something, and if you're very specifically targeted, kind of like cancer treatment, if you're targeting the person or idea that was either doing something reprehensible or is completely BS, and you can show that, at least make your case in a very strong fashion, and it's just focused on that, that's fine. My question was when she was rounding out that video with, you have no morals, blah, 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 you, who is you? So that's why that's a really good question, Des. It's unclear. It's unclear. You would have to talk to her. I believe it's I don't think that has anything to do with any sex or gender there. I think that's just standard personality type that it's like, as a, I've been told I'm very disagreeable. I can be a very disagreeable person because someone says something or anything might not jive. I might point it out. Now, if it maybe just something small and I'm just pointed out and that causes chaos and people get angry and stuff like that, maybe it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Maybe you don't let something go. Um, if I'm going to be extremely charitable, I would say Professor Hossenfelder is somebody that has worked within the physics community that has some concerns about the bureaucratic function and kind of how things are laid out there. Has some problems, thinks things could be better, doesn't see a lot of folks bringing up these things, so she chooses to bring up these things. These things get brought up, folks distance themselves from her. So she's like, well, if folks in the community don't want to listen, I'll just go on and put up some YouTube videos and stuff. It's kind of like Professor Wolfram. It's like he wrote a new kind of science primarily for folks within the physics community. He really didn't really that much warm reception for a while, but a lot of other folks within like the computational and other communities seem to really enjoy it. And now it's the point where Stephen Wolfram just go on, do a live stream, present his things, write onto his blog and stuff like that, all his thoughts and everything. And to be fair, it's pretty well done. It's got the links and everything. And occasionally, I think some folks on Team Wolfram package it into a paper that eventually maybe gets published. He says he hasn't published for years, but I think folks on his behalf have kind of compressed some of those articles because I'm pretty sure I saw some from him a few years ago. But that's just me. Uh, well, Tommy, that's very agreeable of you. I appreciate that. Uh, um, so if she cares about stuff, she's highlighting it, and now you're gonna have 2 million views for a channel, like even Dr. Eric Weinstein point out. Um, Sabine's YouTube channel is right now technically has a larger reach than even Professor Brian Greene's World Science Festival. So, I mean, you could say that. You could say the numbers don't mean anything. Um, you could phrase it in an uncharitable perspective. Well, Dr. Sabina Hossenfelder, she didn't make it in particle physics as the way it has laid out and everything. Oh, now she's just spiteful at sour grapes and stuff like that. And anytime she has that, I'm like, if it was just that, wouldn't you have just said, I got this email the other day? Maybe it was 7 years ago. I just look, when I'm looking through the history of her YouTube, I'm like, I could see it as a plausible thing. Now, the end part, like Des was bringing up, see, that's the thing. Who are you talking about here? And I think this is where it gets murky. Is she talking about the scientists doing the work? 'Cause I'm pretty sure most scientists that get onto a job like that really just want to just do their job, keep their job, live their life the best they can. It's sounding more like a function of the interface between scientific management, the managers who might be part of these different projects. And again, this is primarily in fundamental physics. Because if you look at applied stuff, you got freaking the NVIDIA CEO coming up, be like, yes, we've got, I don't know, exaflops or petaflops of just ability to do like literally magnitudes for storage chips. Like technology is freaking crazy. If you're talking about the fundamentals themselves, that is where some of the concern is. And if you're trying to do something like, well, we need a larger collider so we can probe higher energy levels. Why? Because maybe just a little bit further we'll find some supersymmetry. Um, Maybe, but then again, there was a more recent measurement of the top quark that put it under 173 GeV, like a, it was about 172.45 or 7 or something like that. Which, if it's 173 and then I think a half, you enter the realm of supersymmetry, but it appears like it's a bit below that. So if that's true, supersymmetry may be off the table. Again, that's just kind of what I've heard from some smart folks and stuff. I'm sure people would disagree with that. Uh, ooh, it was a heck of a thing. I just kind of listened to it, just I'm like, oh, which angles are these going through? I've seen some other folks out there kind of just like give a little bit of a commentary. Some folks are just kind of like holding their tongues, so like, I'm not sure. But hypothetically, I'm willing to entertain the idea just because, well, are things perfect? No, no. I mean, at least maybe things within the universe are perfect. Are we perfect? No. Are institutions perfect? No. But I believe they can be more perfect. Why? Well, hey, I'm an American. I'm kind of the whole part of the Constitution. It's like, yeah, we know we're not perfect, but we can be more perfect. Why? Because we can. And so we level up. So I know I ranted on for a while about this. Maybe we'll start doing this because number one, uh, rather than just throwing all these random things and just random numbers that folks don't understand, uh, it is fun to actually go through a lot. Because a lot of times, if I have a topic, it's like, all right, you'll go to an Anton video, go to a PBS FaceTime, a Dr. Hossenfelder video. You go there, go to some of the links, read through the links and everything, and try to put my own spin on it. It's like, why don't I put my own spin if I'm going to use a lot of these videos anyway? It's I might as well show it. Make sure the link is in the doobly doo if you want to go through it for all your to get it in its original glory. That's the thing. This is just a response video right here. An hour and 20-minute response video for a video that was 9 minutes, like 6.5 when you remove the commercial. But hello, science, that's just my job 5 days a week. Well, it's you hear a lot of interesting things. But yeah, that's all we got for right now. So other than that, please out everybody. Take care of yourselves. A crazy world out there, but here's hoping for a better tomorrow. Why? Because we can.